So, hi guys, welcome. We must say that now third episode. It only took us 4 tries actually
That's
because
right.
we had our intros or our sizzle reel episode, but we think we've settled on a name, and it's Gina came up with it, and we all loved it. Who wants to say it, Ron?
I will. You know what? It actually slipped my mind. Hold on a second.
Oh man, how old are you,
Uh,
Ron?
yes, exactly. That's exactly right. So the word cryptid is attached to it.
Well, cryptic because we
Cryptic. That's right. That's
cryptic.
right. So it's cryptic
Critique,
critique.
cryptic critique.
What's going on? Whenever I heard about this today, and I heard about this hours ago, folks. So you have to understand it's just been hours ago. Um, I love the idea. But then what's got stuck in my mind today is because whenever I was driving this morning, I always listen to these shows called Sunday Morning Sunrise, which is these acoustic sets. So all through the day, I've been thinking of Cryptic Cafe. You know,
Uh,
with the acoustic guitar playing in the background.
Yeah.
Cryptic Cafe is when we get uh, Lyle and others to play in a
There you go.
band at one of the
There you go.
conferences. That's the
That's
Cryptic
right.
Cafe.
That's right. And then whenever we're also doing our pizza, reviews, we can use that as well too. But I think that the cryptic,
Is it cryptic click or cryptic or cryptic
Critique.
critique? Okay,
Critique.
just wanted to make sure.
the cryptic critique. So the CCs.
CC.
Yeah.
I like that.
We got to come up with a stylized look for the CC so we can use the name and symbol.
Right. And I also have to get a tattoo on my neck in graphic letters for street cred.
So Ron, we can do what we did because one of the books I wrote, the one with the kids as the gang, the team,
Yes.
in it, they created a tattoo to protect themselves from witches.
Yes.
So I think I sent you a copy, didn't I? So yeah, we could do that.
Stephen, nothing exists in a vacuum. Remember here
Yeah,
now.
I forgot. But
Yes, that's right.
so there, people look for us at conferences, and we can have cryptic critique tattoos, temporary tattoos.
Right then there, man. Right then and there. And you will be the envy of the neighborhood. It will be like initiation into a gang.
Yeah.
You do not
Yes,
have
I was just
that.
thinking I
Yeah.
grab the gang symbol. Or
That's
something,
right.
You know?
That's right. Yeah, the CC. You don't get to sit at the cool kids table at lunch in high school if you don't have the CC tag.
Right. Yeah. We're probably going to get some kids getting it now, and they're going to say they're part of a gang. We're going to get called in front of like some
That's
board
right.
of
That's right.
education, Texas Board of Education. So, all right.
Now that we have a name and we have an umbrella and a banner which to fly, this makes it so much easier now.
Right.
We're not
Well-
just, we know what we're talking about now.
I've got a busy week with some personal health crap. Haha, literally. And I will try and get the domain name, and I will try and start getting a website up. I still owe Ron some updates on his website too. So we want to have the website because that'll be the central location to target people to the Facebook, to the YouTube, to the RSS feed, and tie it all together.
You know what, Stephen? I actually gave you a shout out on Paranormal Brew. I was on a few weeks ago. I said Stephen Schneider's doing my website, so I already gave you a shout
Nice.
out. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I hope they don't look at it right now because that's not going to do much.
No, it's all good. It's all good. So tonight I'm kind of excited.
Yes.
If I'm not, if age hasn't set in, if I'm not confused here, I believe that we're talking about experiences in relation to Gina. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yep. And I will say she has told me a couple things, and so here's my take on any of this with anybody. And we talk about this when I watch the shows. People walk in, they go, "Oh, it has an oppressive feeling." I'm always like, "Give me a break. You're on a TV show. That doesn't tell me anything." I could say in front of the camera every time I walk into a place, "Oh, there's an oppressive feeling," or there's a smell. Oh, I don't know that watching TV.
That's right.
So what I'm getting at is what it comes down to is you have to have some trust and integrity of who you're listening to. And there are a couple people we've listened to that I'm like, okay, if they're telling me, that there's a smell, I might believe it more than somebody else.
Yes.
What I'm getting at is when Gina told me some of these things, I was a little, at first, but for good marriage relations, you got to believe regardless.
That's
But
right.
even deep down, I was still a little skeptical
Yeah.
on it. But I, when I think about it, I'm like, what would be her reason for making things up? And as Colin has pointed out, maybe we can't prove what caused all of this, but it's interesting because she has had so many things happen.
Right, right. And it's made an impact on her.
Yeah.
The other thing I look at, whenever I write about hauntings, everything is subjective. It means something. It's a personal thing that you have to deal with. So we're not here to say, oh, this is not true. This is not true. Whatever has happened to her has impacted her in such a way that it's manifested itself in many different, ways,
Right.
Emotional ways and all these other things. So that's the way I look. That's my approach whenever it comes to experiencers, how it's affected them.
And I think Colin mentioned it a couple weeks ago. We don't have definite proof until something way of testing it or proving it. But I also don't disbelieve what she tells me.
Sure, absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
So I guess we'll turn it over to the mother of the group. So, sweetie, tell us a bit. Well, you said it. You said it first. You said it in the sizzle reel.
Yeah, I did. That's true. Very true.
So give us a little background. Tell us a little bit about some of the experiences you've had.
Well, and I don't know if this one's going to air or not. I had the experience when my father it was like 1985. So I was like 15, 16 around then with what I think was an angel. But from the time I was little, I would always just, it wasn't all the time. And it wasn't like all of a sudden, like you hear different people say things. I don't know how to explain it. It would happen occasionally. It wasn't like I could make it happen or bring it on. Does that make sense? I couldn't say to myself, like the old Johnny Carson show, put the letter to my forehead. And, I that's not how it works. But I just, again, when I was a kid, I always just assumed everybody else was the same way. And it wasn't until I got older that I realized people didn't just always know things, or people didn't sense things, or people didn't feel a certain way, that it was more me. And then I got to the point where I didn't say a whole lot to people because, people don't usually, at least when I was younger, look to that type of stuff that's, oh, you're weird, that's creepy, don't talk to me. So anyway, I did have an experience with two of my best friends when we were teenagers. I won't really go into all of the detail because they're involved, and I don't know that they'd want everybody to know their story. But a friend of ours at the time when we were young was very afraid to live at her home. And she was like, there are things going on. And I tried to talk to my mom and dad, and they won't listen to me. Will you guys please come over? So I just remember that summer we would go over to her house over and over again because she was afraid to be alone. And the things that you like, a rocking chair in a room, like a little doll rocking chair would move on its own, and the radio would come on, and a ball would roll across the floor. And again, that's all very, I know, cliche, but it was really happening. And as young girls, we would be laying in our bed together, like with the covers up to our nose, because we were like, what is it? And as kids, we were trying to figure out, do we talk to it? Do we say, like, why is it here? What's going on? And the short story in that is we eventually found out that on that specific area, on that specific property, and in the end, we, like during the hauntings, if you will, we realized it was a little boy, probably 8, 9 years old, I'd say. And it just, everything that he did seemed to be very like a childlike. I want to play. It was not malicious. We never felt like we weren't afraid of it. It was scary things that were happening, but the sense in the room wasn't anything terrifying. And then, like I said, we wound up finding out actual records that were documented that on this area, on this property, back in the late 1800s, a tornado came through and everybody survived but this 8-year-old little boy. So for me, that was the biggest validation. We weren't crazy. We weren't. My mom, I went to my mom during this time and I told her the stuff that was going on because I felt like my mom was an open-minded person at that particular time. I think we should take you in and see, are you on drugs? Are you smoking weed? That type of stuff. I'm like, no, Mom, I'm not doing any of that. I'm coming to you and asking you, like, what do we do? You know, how do I help my best friend not live in a house where the lights are blinking off and on, and, you know, radios are coming on and chairs are moving? You know, how do we figure out? And it was our intention as young kids to let this little boy know he didn't have to stay. It was time for him to move on to something else instead of staying in this house, you know, and being alone and not being with anybody, not moving on to be with his family. That was a pretty big moment.
Let me ask you something on that. And I think we've talked a little bit about this, but how exactly would you tell the difference between somebody that is really experiencing something that we would classify as supernatural and somebody that is just seeing it all in their head and is mentally unstable? How would you tell the difference? Obviously, your mother couldn't tell any difference.
Well, and I think in that situation, I was in the house with other people and watching this stuff happen. It was like, and that's the hard part to explain to somebody. There were physical things that happened. It wasn't, we were sitting in the kitchen one time, and my friend had a little Pomeranian dog. And whenever she would start yapping, we would get tense at first because we would know something was about to happen. And one of the big moments we were sitting at our kitchen table, and there was a fruit basket sitting in the, you know, how everybody in the 70s had a fake fruit basket sitting on top of their refrigerator.
Along with pictures of fake fruit baskets.
Yeah, exactly. And the whole thing just came flying off the top of it. And then even as young kids, we were like, okay, checking the light bulbs in the house, unscrewing them, putting another one in. We did these things as kids, check the circuit breaker, you know. We would like move the rocking chair in her room to another side of the room because maybe that part of the room was crooked. We were literally trying to figure out, why was this stuff happening? What could be another explanation besides, you know, crazy. And I don't even think of it, crazy or paranormal. You know, we just were like, that's why she called us. She was terrified to be in her home by herself.
So Ron, Colin, let me throw that at you too. What's your guys' thoughts and opinions? How can you, or could you? And do you think maybe there are times people have been diagnosed one way or the other, like, oh, they've experienced this when they really are crazy? You know, what do you guys think of that?
Well, to be completely honest, I think this is treading some dangerous territory, because this has been something that has been used to harm people, because this is a discussion and an argument that has been used to hurt people throughout history.
Meaning even whether you're crazy or
no, in recent history, people who have mental health problems are accused of having demons in them, being connected to the paranormal, experiencing stuff like that. So they do not get help, and they end up being exorcised or harmed by religious people. It is a dangerous thing to discuss. And to be completely honest, I think, bottom line, in my opinion, we know people have mental health problems where they can hallucinate things, where they can see things. We don't know that the paranormal exists. The way I look at it is, in this specific situation, it is a very dangerous thing to lean on the side of it's a paranormal thing over someone's having a mental health crisis.
Well, I think that it's a provocative thing to talk about. Let's put it that way. We are taking religion out of this completely, for this argument at least. So whenever we talk about the idea between insanity and sanity, that's the kind of tightrope that we have to walk. But, you know, there have been researchers out there that have suggested that, is it possible that what we call insanity is somebody that is open up to another world that we are treating with drugs and things? I mean, there is an argument about that. It's not necessarily a mainstream argument. It's one of those kind of pseudo arguments or pseudo.
Right.
Yeah. But so if we do take that out of the equation, is it possible that people hear voices or people that have hallucinations are indeed subjected to the paranormal. I mean, that is something that we could discuss. Um, and if you look at everything through history as well, too, especially whenever it comes to a woman, we have great names like hysteria that we can throw out there to undermine a woman even more, to say that this is just a feminine thing. But that being said, Gina, the one thing that I do want to point out is historically, the idea of a woman being involved in something that's being haunted is, there's a precedent for that. And there's a lot of scholarship out there that may suggest that the women who are experiencing this is somehow projecting that onto the environment themselves, like the Enfield haunting over in England, a famous one. So is it possible that what we call the human psyche, and we talk about, all these other kind of things that go into who we are, we talked about vibrations last week, is it possible that what we call, hauntings or interactions with the paranormal, either is something that's projected from the experiencer, and it's actually only from the experiencer, and it's projected on the world around them, or are certain people simply predisposed to acting almost as a circuit, and then you can flip a switch, and then this interaction happens. This is the thing. This is such a nebulous area, and our show's only an hour long, so this is we can go into very, very deeply. But then it starts getting boring after a while, because you can beat it with, you beat this with a stick all night long.
Right.
But I can only say that in my research and things that I've had to deal with, the majority of experiencers in haunted locations have been women. And by the majority, I'm talking about 80%. And that's just from my personal experiences. About 80% have been involved in that. And usually they are, between certain ages, between 13 years old and 24 years old, or what have you. So whenever you're saying these things, Gina, that fits the scenario for most of the investigations that I've had. But again, I'm glad that you brought up that topic, though, Stephen, because that is something that I think is necessary to talk about. Because when we talk about the paranormal, like Colin said, there's really no way to prove the paranormal is going on, but it does impact people. So is this impact then something that's systemic because of the experience, or is it something that we would call a mental health problem at that point? These are the kind of things that we have to talk about.
And that's, going along with what Colin said, that's where we are right now. We have no real way of proving a lot of this. It's
right.
Conjecture. It's our
right.
thoughts and beliefs, a lot of it.
Sure. So. Now, I've done an investigation before when I've interviewed the witness, and I thought most assuredly that there was something terribly wrong with this person. This person we could not take at face value. This person was, obviously disturbed by something. And then whenever I was discussing it with another investigator, which happened to be Stan Gordon, as a matter of fact, he pointed out, is it possible that the experience made that person into what I then deemed as somebody that was unstable?
There's probably 500 million permutations that we can probably go through.
Right.
Belief, not belief, proof, not proof, science, not science, with all of this. So
right.
I don't want to derail it all from taking away from Gina going over what she has experienced too.
Yeah. But I think it's pertinent, though, because she's a woman. And Gina, whenever you were experiencing these things, you were at a teenage, you were at least preteen or into your teenage years, correct?
Yes.
Yep. See, so it all kind of fits the subject there.
But the thing is that to move on, and obviously, the mental health issue is a big thing that's near and dear to my heart, because, I have several kids who have issues. I have another kid who has autism. So I hold that one close to my heart 100%. But my stuff, that didn't stop happening to me. It wasn't just 16 or 21. It continued to happen throughout my life, which is,
right.
I wasn't saying you had mental health problems when I was making that statement. I just want to be clear.
Right.
Yeah. That's why I'm saying, and that, again, for that alone, when they say, you're hearing voices that, again, maybe that person, like Steven said, now
Right.
obviously we have mental health issues out there for everybody. Well, what if you set down 50 people who have mental health issues, but some of them are actually experiencing something otherworldly or hearing something from a different frequency that we're not. And again, look at when we talked about, like in our other show, about magic and people being burnt at the stake for that. You also had people put in institutions, hundreds of years ago, because they were experiencing things and being able to say things, but maybe it was just something as simple as intuition, and it predicted right 9 times out of 10. Oh my God, that person's got to be something. It's
Right.
the devil. Put him away. So
Bottom line for me is, we can't prove it is or isn't, and I mean, Gina says this is what she experienced. I take it at face value for her. But I know absolutely there are people out there that would come back with arguments that no, it's this mental health issue. It's this other thing. Could they be right? I don't know. 300 years from now, we might have a better answer.
Well, this is another good topic, and I'm glad that we did bring up this topic there. So, Stephen, Gina, and Colin. So, what else happens in this situation is, because people say this cannot be happening, that obviously this is in your head. There's obviously a problem. Then comes up the next thing of suppression. Correct?
That's what her mom did, or was trying to do.
So, is it possible that we are all kind of innately in tune with the world around us, and also the paranormal world around us as children, and it's eventually suppressed out of us by culture at large?
Or, as some people have surmised, maybe kids are more open. Well, I guess it's exactly what you just
that's
said.
what's wrong.
Yeah, kids are much more open, and maybe whatever part of her didn't grow up.
Or she just didn't allow it to be shut off either.
Right.
Yeah, that's the other thing too. She seems like a strong enough woman. I don't think that anybody's going to tell her what to do.
Oh, I sure don't. All right, sweetie, what else have you experienced?
One of the other big things that happened was when I was living in North Carolina. There was a house that we wound up renting. We moved into, and a lot of times when I do watch the paranormal shows and I see certain things, I actually wind up having the sensation or the feeling of the first time something happened to me, because it triggers that in me, the memory. And again, so Frankie, Adam, and Sarah were little, like 3 little toddlers, like the Ninja Assassin Squad when they were kids. So a lot of the times when something would happen, I would chalk it up to one of them. But when things would happen in this house, I'd come back into the kitchen and a cupboard door would be open. I'd come back in and all the lights would be on in my kitchen or my dining room. And I'm always like, okay, now I'm pretty sure. But again, to err on the side of caution, it's not what I think it is. Shut the lights off, go back to bed.
And just to jump in real quick, that's what a lot of people would come back. Oh, you had 3 little kids. Every single time is explained away from 3 little kids. And, maybe that is it. But when you're actually there at the moment, you're like, yeah, but it's 12 o'clock and my kids have been asleep for 3 hours.
And that's like I said, that's the times when stuff would happen. I remember the first time I thought it again, I don't think that what was there in North Carolina at the time was malicious, but it was definitely angry. My lid to my washer and my dryer, I came around the corner to start to do laundry, and they both were like rumbling and banging, like something, like how your washing machine would tilt out of whirl because you put too much in there. Okay, I run into it, rip it open because I thought I put stuff, open it up, there's nothing inside my washing machine. I was like, okay, that's a little weird. Maybe it's electrical. But then as things started to happen, the kids would come and say things to me, like, what was it? He's in my bedroom again. Can you tell him to go away? Then that's when, like, okay, time out. I don't care if you're going to mess with me or be around, it's fine. Do not mess with my children. They need to sleep. That's not welcome to hear. So a lot of the different, like the very cliched stuff was happening. Lights would flicker, cabinet doors. I'd come back in the kitchen and every single cabinet door and all my drawers would be open, you know, push them all closed, shut all the doors again. And I even at that time, and right now the term eludes me, but I thought to myself, you know, maybe it's me. Maybe I'm pushing out some kind of energy because I'm frustrated. I wasn't married to a really good man at the time. So maybe it's my energy. I'm pushing something out and it's happening because of me. The light bulb's buzzing because I'm giving off too much of my own energy because I'm like pissed at the world right now because he's out drinking again. I even thought maybe that could be stuff that was happening at that particular point in time. Two things that happened, and I could go into more detail about it, but a friend of mine knew, and she still does to this day, that weird things would happen, paranormal experiences. And she told me, before I come down and visit you, tell all of your paranormal friends to stay away from the house. You know, I can't handle that type of stuff. And my friend came down for her visit. And we were standing in my laundry room doing the laundry. And all of a sudden, my back door started like somebody was trying to get in, ripping at the handle, slammed, like jiggling, and, you know, bam, 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 bam. And she looked at me and she's like, what's happening? And I said, it's fine. Don't worry about it. It's okay. She's like, I told you. I said, I have no control over what they do. And she's like, I can't do this, Gina. I can't stay at your house. This is literally going to terrify me to death. She wound up, I think, going to a hotel at that particular time. And okay, and again, fast forward, and I could tell you more stories about that time period. But we wound up finding out that, again, the back of the property was probably, I don't know, a mile. Anyway, the back half of the property I lived on was buried near and on top of Indian burial mounds.
So how did you find that out?
Since I was renting from those people in that area, and they had lived in that part of North Carolina for quite a long time, they had a lot of information because of having to survey the land. When they built that part of the property, they thought that they had cleared the burials, the Indian mounds, but they hadn't. They were actually buried at the tail end of them. And, you know, it's supposed to be considered like, what's that, consecrated ground? And they were on top of it. And I personally believe that those particular people and Indians that had been buried there were ticked off that their area, their land had been disturbed. Because on top of it, they were starting to, there was an orchard on the left side of the property, and they were going back behind the orchard and starting to dig that area up to add more fruit trees and that onto the property. Because when you looked at the structure of the home, it was the house I lived in fenced in, and then there were 3 homes further up the road it was all the same family. And that particular home that they had, they were just renting out to whoever. And I lived in there for those couple of years. So,
well, the good news is, if it was sacred ground, at least you're not going to get any Highlanders cutting each other's heads off there. So that's one thing you don't have to worry about. So, so that's not the only stuff you've experienced, though. And I'll tell you, I'll just throw in here right now, and even Colin laughed about this. Gina always said that people would just come up and start talking to her, like in the middle of the supermarket, at a football game. You know, people just randomly would come up and start talking to her, like she attracted them. And we kind of laughed about it. But after she and I started dating, it started happening to me. And I'm like, you're rubbing off on me. And Colin even laughed the one time we were walking, and I forget where we were at, but like this guy literally veered out of his way to get in front of me and say something to me before walking around me. And Colin's like, what was that? I'm like, I don't know. It's been happening now. So, you know, again, that's kind of anecdotal. Could that just be, I noticed it? Yeah, it absolutely could, but it just seemed weird. It started happening after we got together and were dating.
And I've heard that before too. I've heard people say that they've had no psychic abilities, but they're on an investigation with a psychic, and then they were somehow able to see things they had never seen before. It's as if, again, talking about the idea of vibrations, somehow you're synced up, and then things just become a little bit more clear to you.
Yeah, something.
Do you remember the time, Stephen, we were out on a date and we were at a bookstore and you couldn't find me? And then you came around the corner and there I was in the middle of an aisle. the lady came out of nowhere, older lady, and I'm hugging her. She's crying. I'm in this full embrace with this elderly woman. And Steven's like, do you even know her? And I'm like, no, I don't know her,
Yeah.
So
So as you go on, so Gina, let me ask you. So we've covered your early years, and then we covered in. So when was the last time you would say that you've had some sort of experience that you cannot just kind of explain away?
so very, very, I feel like there's things that's happened living here in this house with Steven, but one of the key things that happened to me when we first started dating again is it was very specific 2 different times that him and I were laying in the bed, and I felt a complete depression in the bed, like somebody else got in the bed with us. And I thought, oh, okay, Cassie's getting in bed with us. She's our dog. Look around. Well, there's Cassie laying on the other side of Steven already. So I kind of sat up and looked around the room thinking, okay, maybe one of the kids showed up. Look, nope, nobody's there. So I said, okay, I laid back down. I adjusted myself, whatever it was, got back up and readjusted its position with me. And I was like, all right, apparently somebody's laying in bed with us other than me, Steven, and the dog. And I just said very quietly, okay, fine. If you need to lay in bed, that's fine. Just go to sleep and be good. I don't want, I don't want anything weird happening before Steven and I got too far into our relationship to be like, hey, guess what? Guess what hangs around me all the time? So
yeah, that's kind of hard to kind of discuss away at that early on. That's right. That's right.
I mean, we had kind of told each other on our first date all of these things that happened to us in our lives. So I think he was kind of prepared for it, but probably a lot of my big experiences did happen right before I moved in here at the hospital I worked at. So it's actually been within the last, like even here, I think that I see Steven's grandmother. I see this I don't see her specifically, but I see this energy of a very aggravated woman that looks like she's standing there with her arms crossed. That's the presence I get. The only reason I say that is because I feel like there's somebody in the hallway out here sometimes. I hear the walking. I will, Steven, you need to open the door if the dog wants in the bedroom. Go to open the door up and there's nothing there. And, I'm like, you heard the footsteps too, right? Which then prompts him to tell the story about Colin and Megan when they were little.
Can I tell that one?
Of course you can, babe.
Thanks, sweetie. Yeah, I was going to bring that up actually. I've got, there are things that do happen around here. A lot of them I get skeptical about and dismiss and can write off, and rightfully so. We don't have the best wiring in the house, so when a light flickers, no, I don't think it's the paranormal or ghost. I think it's the bad wiring, or worse, windstorms outside will cause the lights to flicker. So okay, whatever. But when I was growing up, when I had friends over, and this was early teen years or so, 12, 13, we would dare each other to come sit up in the hallway, like right here where I'm at, because you would hear footsteps in the hallway. Me and my sister heard footsteps in the hallway at times. Now, of course, my mother dismissed it. Oh, you guys are dreaming, and it's one or the other of you out walking, and you're hearing each other, or, whatever. Or it was her checking on us or something like that. But we heard footsteps in the hallway. And I had forgotten about all of that. None of my friends ever stayed in the hallway in the dark. I asked them about it and they laughed and said, yeah, no, I didn't want to do that. So then I had Colin and Megan, and they were in one of the old bedrooms that me and my sister used to have. And there was one morning I remember they got up and they were tired and grumpy. And I'm like, what is wrong with you guys this morning? They're like, well, we didn't get any sleep because you were walking around the hallway all night. I wasn't walking around the hallway all night. I was sleeping. So I hadn't told them that. They were too little to tell ghost stories about the house they lived in, but they both said there was somebody walking in the hallway, like pacing in the hallway, stomping. I didn't hear it. And then when Gina moved in, she said, I was just kind of relating that. She goes, oh yeah, I hear footsteps in the hallway all the time. But I don't hear them anymore. So it's kind of like, the Polar Express. When you get too old, you can't hear the bell ring. But so that was in that one is still to me a little interesting because I experienced it as a kid. My kids experienced it without me saying anything to them. And then Gina moved in and experienced the same thing.
Right. So, Colin, what do you read? Do you have any recollection of this?
Colin, you there? You're on mute, buddy.
The thing was frozen. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
It wouldn't let me do anything. No, so yeah, I remember that. And I remember hearing them until I was like midway through middle school. They were weird. I don't know what they were. I don't. As far as I'm going to go is they were weird. I don't know what they were. I am not willing to say they're ghosts.
Well, agreed. And I mean, I know this is an old house, man. We looked it up. It's from 1863. It's been added on to like 3 times, all by redneck hillbillies. So everything's crooked. It's sinking a little bit. So could you say, oh, is it just the boards and things are settling in your half asleep state? It sounds like footsteps. I could, yeah, that's the problem. We can't prove there was manifestation of footsteps in the hallway, but considering it happened over 3 different generations or 3 different decades of time, it makes it a little more interesting.
That's right. And different people, even people outside of the family, observing this stuff as well too, which makes it more and more unique.
Right. But 12-year-old kids, you tell them, oh, I hear footsteps in the hallway. You will go sit up there in the dark. That could be argued away. They don't want to do it because you just scared the crap out of them.
Yeah.
Yes. So, Gina, did you ask the people that you were renting that house from if the people before you or anyone else had ever said that cupboards would come open or anything like that?
Well, the house hadn't been lived in for a while before we moved in. And I don't think that the people who rented from me now, and again, I'm not going to say redneck hillbillies, but I'm going to say like good old Southern family, I don't think they wanted to allude to the fact that there was anything paranormal possibly going on there because they wanted to rent the place out.
Well, if we ever travel down that way, we should go look up the old address and ask the people living there now, like Sam and Dean.
It's just, I don't know. I mean, I think that one of the things about me too is that I'm an open-minded person, maybe even to a fault sometimes, but that's why I think things find their way to me or they make themselves known to me or whatever words you want to use for it, because I am open to it, which sometimes wasn't always a good thing because, when you're sleeping at nighttime, you don't need, that extra, hey, wake up, I need to talk to you right now in the middle of the night, ghost. But it's, I had to learn how to shield myself from that and say, nope, you're not allowed to talk to me right now. Nope, you can't come in. You need to go, that type of stuff. Because I think if I hadn't learned how to do that, it would have gotten out of hand for me. So,
Steve, I will tell you, I'm excited as we go forward with these projects of ours, to have somebody that's intuitive going with us on these kind of investigations and expeditions, because I've used people before, but that I did not have any kind of friendship with or anything. So I think that looking at it from this perspective, it's going to make it a lot more interesting, because I think that I truly believe I've had enough, again, Stephen, like you had said, I have enough anecdotal things happen to me to know that there are people out there that are able to at least they're at least able to discern things differently than I do. That not necessarily mean that they're seeing, ghosts or anything.
mm-hmm.
They're able to, decipher things differently than I'm capable of doing. So I'm looking forward to this as we go forward on our little mysteries, to see what all transpires with having Gina aboard.
And for me, it's okay. Maybe it's not real or true or happen. Maybe she really is crazy and I need to keep an eye open at night. There's maybe a little bit of that there. Yeah. But between what I've talked with Gina about and talked to others, listened to others, seeing the videos, read some of the stories that people tell, and let me say this: James Patterson is working on a book of telling people's stories, haunted, true life stories that they've experienced. He's co-writing it. Actually, JD Barker is co-writing it. He's probably going to be doing most of it. I talked to JD a little bit, told him a few things. I might try and see if Gina gets some time to talk to him. And he said he's talked to dozens of people. He's like, there's so many stories that are very, very similar to that. After hearing that many stories, he's like, I can't go, yeah, everything is complete hokum. He's like, it makes you wonder, what is this? You know, if I talk to 20 people, California, Ohio, Alaska, Texas, Florida, and none of them have ever talked or met, and they tell me this story of something that happens and they're similar, he says, you got to wonder. That's what he said. So it can you prove it? No. But does it make you wonder? Sometimes.
And the other thing too, and not that I want to call out one specific TV show, but I remember just coming across a TV show then when I was a little bit younger called Ghost Hunters, and I was totally blown away by these guys. And again, I don't know where, I know there was some discord between some of the people on the show, but anyway, what my point is that when they first came on, I was so blown away by the fact that they didn't, like, everything wasn't a ghost, everything wasn't yeah, definitely it's haunted, or like, oh my god, we got 6 hours of videotape that shows all the ghosts in the place, that they were going in there and trying to debunk things from, like, you know, electrical wires, loose bulbs, piping, you know, and to me that was dear to my heart, because for me, not everything is haunted, not everything is paranormal. I know that lights don't work and electricity and stuff like that and whatever, but that's why I like to see all aspects of it. I want to know what it is, what is out there. I would love to have definite proof at some point in my life.
That's what I like when Ghost Hunters came out also. As I remember one of the first episodes I ever watched, I'm like, okay, this will be entertaining. You know, and I started watching it and they're doing this and they're like, oh, look, squeaky door and it's loose. And oh, look, the floorboard, and look, this pipe's loose, you know, that type of stuff. And then they get to the homeowner, they're like, okay, here's what we found. And they said, so basically what we found is your house isn't haunted, it's just old. And I'm like, oh my God, I wouldn't have believed that's what they said. I was very impressed by that. There's others that are a lot less than that.
Yeah, whenever everything's a demon and everybody has to get possessed at least one time on the show, within the hour of the show, absolutely.
When every episode starts sounding scripted, the one I watched, they were doing like a marathon, and literally at 25 after, for 4 episodes in a row, they said, "Oh yeah, you know, this is reliable. This has never happened before." 5 minutes later, they went, "Oh my God!" Cut to commercial. Literally, it was the same script every single episode. I'm like, okay, give me a break.
And I think that's a good thing to bring up mental illness at that point as well, too.
That's true.
Yeah, but no. So I think that you know, as we go, you know, deeper down this rabbit hole, is that we can all agree, Colin included, that things do happen to us that we simply cannot reasonably explain away. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're all sitting here today doing this podcast, and why people will listen to us as well too, is because people have had experiences and they don't want to necessarily say that it was this or that, but they simply cannot explain it away. You know, and that's one of the things that brings us to the table for this kind of stuff.
And interesting to get, not to step away from the ghosts or anything for a moment, but we've had those structures up in our woods that we can't explain where they came from, where so many of them came from, how they're put together, or anything. So
it's on the same property where you have footsteps, the same property where somebody was in the bed with you. And see, this does add more into the precedent of everything, because something seems to be happening at this particular location for some reason.
Right. And it's definitely not us just trying to get attention, because this stuff's been happening for decades, and most of it we've never talked about, except like you.
I just feel the need to play a little bit of a devil's advocate. Just
please.
We have had weird things happen, like the hallway. And then I started doing research into other stuff, and we started noticing more. Gina comes in with a past experience with stories, and we started noticing more. That might not be meaning because we are actually experiencing more weird things. It might just be because we're primed to look for it, so we happen to see it in more instances.
Like,
Completely agree. Yep.
like when I had a BMW, I started noticing how many BMWs there were, which again is valid for saying that and acknowledging that, because it very well could be. Maybe we're just trying to see more stuff. But what else, sweetie? I know you told me a couple things about coming home from work at Geneva, and you've had other things too. What other thing? That's the thing. I agreed with Colin. So is Gina really experiencing these things, or does she want to experience it so it seems like she is? It goes right back to the whole back and forth argument on mental health. There's no real definitive answer to that. So I go on the aspect that something's happening to her that we can't explain.
So an experience that I have had, which is could be subjective. In this one, to me, I'm willing to go ahead and say that this could have been just more me pulling it out of my mind at the time, and it was quite a lengthy period. My grandmother had passed away in 2005, and we couldn't make it home to see her before she passed away. And I have never been so devastated in my life, and I've had some pretty big devastation lately, and my grandmother's death still takes precedence over that for me. She was everything to me, and we couldn't get home, and the only thing we had was a phone conversation. So there were a couple of times over those next months to a year where I needed to know she was okay, and I needed to see her. And I would, and to me, this is that this could have been just me, and I'm again willing to say that, but I all of a sudden would be driving in my car, and the smell of spaghetti cooking in the kitchen, spaghetti sauce, homemade sauce, would overwhelm me, almost to the point where I was like, what is that? You know, her, like, flowers, there was certain flowers that she liked, and I would overwhelmingly smell the flowers. I would ask her, you know, I was asking out loud, begging her, please come to me, I need to see you, I need to know that you're okay. Never came to my dream, but she sure came to my car. And again, it could have been my mind pulling it out and wanting to see her, but I was driving down the road, like, you know, just really thinking about her, and oh my God, and I look in my rear view mirror, and there's my grandmother sitting in the back seat of my car. My first thought was, why are you sitting in the back seat, Grandma? You need to get in the front seat. And she just smiles at me. And I was like, okay, keep driving, look up again. Oh, she's still there. You know, what were the cliches in the movie? You look the second time and they're gone. No, Grandma's still in the car with me. So at the time, I'm like beyond excited. I'm crying. She's with me. And so again, during that period, was it just in my mind? Was I pulling her out of there because I needed her that much? Or did she actually show up to let me know she was okay? Because whenever it was, I felt like I needed her the most is when she was there.
And like you said, even if it wasn't her actual spirit come back, the fact that you got the feeling that she was there and that you saw her, that I'm interested in why that would happen just as much. Why would your brain manufacture that? And why would it manufacture that you're tasting spaghetti, you know, at that time? Yeah, because it's really strong. But think about the power of your brain then to be able to, what you can control with your own body in that, you know, going from the science aspect, you know, if it's not paranormal and spirits and ghosts, that your brain is just doing it to only you, that your mind is literally seeing something in the back seat. Your taste buds are literally tasting something. I mean, if we could figure out that science, think of the miracles we could probably figure out with medicine, you know?
Yeah. Or virtual reality video games.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Wait, that's another show.
I got
That's
ideas
right.
for that. Oh man,
Yeah.
I okay, totally jumping off topic. I had the idea long ago before VR started coming about that should do a haunted house where everybody's wearing headphones So as you walk through the box, you have triggers at certain points. So you hear the sounds, because the one thing most haunted houses are missing is good sound. If you can't hear anything except what's in the headphones, you think of the whispers, the flutters, the noises, and then you put a little brush of air on the back of someone's head, you would
Wow.
freak people out completely. And you don't
Love
even
it.
need the VR goggles.
That's right. That's
You know?
right. Yeah, your mind creates it at that point.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
exactly. That's
Yeah.
what that's the experience. Your mind, I know somebody's there. I can tell my hairs are raising, but it's
Yeah.
all because we're controlling it. You can get those sounds that are too low for you to
Right.
actually tell that you're hearing it, and what that does to your psyche.
That's right. Well, that's just like reading a horror book before you go to bed. These are letters on a piece of paper. You're bringing them to mind. You're conjuring these notions in your head,
Mhm.
giving them life, and that's the reason why you can't go to sleep after you read that.
So you mentioned your grandma. I got an experience, not my experience. I'll tell this story since it connects. First, let me tell you about my mother, and Colin, jump in if you have any good how to describe Nanny. But my mother is she's old school. She's the type of parent, mother, grandmother from the old country. She wasn't, but that's how she is. I went to work. I got home. I made dinner for my kids. I went to bed, and that's life. That's all there is. My mother is not imaginative. She doesn't like to read.
Her identity is service unto others.
Yes,
she does not have much of a person to herself. She is what she does for other people.
Yes. She's not imaginative. She doesn't like fantasy books or movies. It's not her thing to dress up and go to a Halloween party or anything like that. So that being said, when I was growing up, she was a nurse, and she would get up very early to be at work at 6 o'clock in the morning. She told me this story. I think I related this. Didn't I talk to us about this? The one morning, she went walking down the steps, and she got to the bottom of the steps and looked left, and there's a room over by the bathroom that my father had turned into a work room. He was doing upholstery, and he had some chairs back there that people had given him that he was doing in the evenings and on the weekend, side thing, earning some money. And she said she saw her grandfather standing there looking at the chairs and smiling. Her grandfather, I should say, had been dead for a couple years. And he had told my father, you are good enough that you could do this on your own. You don't need to do it just at work for somebody else. You could do this on your own. And my father didn't believe him. After her grandfather died, my father decided to try it. And that was when he had the workroom. And my mother said, I saw my grandfather standing there, looking at the chairs and smiling. Around his feet, it was misty. She's like, I couldn't see his feet. He looked over at me and smiled, and then just disappeared. My mother told us this story when I was 33. She said, I never wanted to tell you when you were little because I didn't want to scare you because you were living in the house. And me and my sister, our jaws just dropped, because we would never imagine my mother telling a ghost story or making something up. Could you argue, oh, it was early in the morning, she was tired? Yeah, she did that for 40 years. Why one morning was she so tired she saw her dead grandfather? So if nothing else, when she told me that story, it clicked in my brain and said, well, there's got to be something more that I don't know, and there's got to be something that I don't understand. I just cannot believe that my mother was going crazy. I can't believe she saw something that wasn't really there. The only thing I personally could believe was that she saw the spirit of my grandfather giving his approval of my father's workroom. And I understand, me personally, but that is the point where I really believe, because when I was younger, I read all the stuff. Colin, as we said, took most of my books, and I just loved it. But
I only took one of your books in my defense. You have the rest of them. And that book you gave to me for Christmas.
Okay. But I bet you took them in a good way, Colin, because you were interested. I was glad that you were reading them and taking them. But it was at that point when my mother said that that like, okay, well, I can't refute everything now.
And that's like I said, that is why we're all sitting here. That's why we're all talking about this, is because so many people across so many cultures have had these kind of experiences that we really, I mean, it seems to be part of the human condition. It seems to be embroidered into our DNA, and you have to ask yourself, the question is, why is it that way? Again, from a scientific aspect, if these things aren't happening from a paranormal point of view, why do we need these from who we are, from an evolutionary point of view? And so many of these things have happened, and things have happened to me as well too. Is that I have to take it a step further and say that whenever people are experiencing things, for the most part, they are almost almost they've become a conduit to another side, to another for whatever reason, whether it's something to say that everything is going to be okay on the other side, or to say, unfinished business or what have you. But it seems as if it becomes not a frightening thing, but it becomes a very reassuring thing. And people want these kind of interactions. People always think that hauntings are a negative thing. And for the vast majority of them, they are very positive because they're life affirming and they're afterlife affirming as well.
Yeah, agreed. So before we wrap things up, sweetie, any last other interesting things happen that you could throw out?
I mean, I have more stories.
So we
Yeah.
could probably do a whole nother show at some point.
Well, what I'd like to do is one time, because this one actually involved Frankie, my oldest, at the time, and I'd like him to come on and tell the story with me
Nice.
one of these times, because again, for me, having somebody else there with me who is either, not a little child, or somebody who's like having my friend Steph with me when that happened in North Carolina, or this other one will tell one time when Frankie may come on and he can tell the story. It's more validating to me that either I'm not experiencing it by myself. Somebody else is seeing this and hearing it too. So it adds or lends validation to me. So
That's a little sneak preview of some future episode.
yeah,
Down
yeah,
the road. That's
it
right.
is.
So before we wrap things up, and I know I'm not sure when all these are coming out, but we've got a lot of things already that we're planning. I mean, Ron, you've got a couple more ghost walks coming up throughout the summer, don't you?
I do. Yeah, they're not going to be happening, I don't believe, until the first one's not until July. But I have about 6 of them coming up in 2021. So, yeah, so as we get closer to the date, but right now, besides my witch thing that comes up next month, I really don't have anything else going on for a while. So,
Yeah. And we've got a couple people our next episode, we're interviewing the crypto-punkologist.
that's right. That's right.
Kenny Irish, right?
Yep. Yep.
So he's going to be our first guest. And then we've also got Stan Gordon coming on,
That's right.
coming up. I'm not sure when, but it is coming.
That's right.
And several of us are going to go up to the Michigan Paracon
Mhm.
with ghost hunters, and other people are going to be there. Me,
Yeah.
Dean
That's right.
Hagland. I'm excited.
Now we have a lot of cool things coming up, and I'm sure that people would have no problem sitting here watching us talk for an hour. But I think bringing on guests is also very helpful as well.
Mhm.
Yeah. So Thursday, next episode for us. I mean Thursday for us. We're going to talk to Kenny, and then next week, next Sunday, Colin wanted to do his carnivorous
Yep.
cats, or what was it, Colin?
Well, I mean, I just wanted to talk about mystery carnivores. The
Mystery
specifics
carnivores.
can be up to whoever. I mean, we can talk about just cats, but I mean, cats also get talked about more than anything.
No, Mystery
Um,
Carnivores is perfect and
Mhm.
great. I'd love to talk about it.
Specifically, when I'm saying carnivores, to make it clear, I'm talking about the order of Carnivora, not meat eaters. So, from everything from seals to otters to dogs to cats to weasels, that stuff. That's the stuff I'm the most.
Cool. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, great. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's several episodes. And then we also have booked time to go to Gretchen's Lock.
Mhm.
If no one's heard of it, we'll talk about it more. So we'll probably do a couple episodes around that with some history and precursor stuff. I know I want to talk a little tech gear, and talk about the photos and videos, and those types of tech things.
And then hopefully throw it all together, all these different backgrounds, and do some sort of live feed as we're doing the actual
Yes.
presentation.
Yeah.
Yep. So we'll probably do all of that. So we're trying to do a little bit of this and that, because we don't, it's not just one thing that we're interested in, not one thing in this world of cryptids, supernatural and paranormal. There's many aspects to it, trying to cover it all.
And we are going to do our utmost best.